All right, chapter 1, quick notes or gold notes. So just to give you an overview of why I do these gold notes, I like to, at the end of each geometry chapter, just stop and say, what were the most important things we learned? What should we remember? We're putting them all on one sheet. It's a great help for you as you do your test review. And hopefully in January, when it's time to review for your exam, it's also a great tool for you to pick up this sheet and look at it and say, oh yeah, that's what we did in chapter 1. And hopefully it'll trigger all those memories and everything you need to know. So this is chapter 1, everything we learned, what's real important that we need to remember. So to start with, for 1.1, we learned how to name everything. And let me just draw a picture so that we can use it in our naming, okay? So I'm going to draw this picture, put a line in here, points A, B, C, and I'm going to put a point D over here. Okay, so if you remember, that's a plane, right? We have a line drawn in there. We have some points drawn in there. So now let's go through and say, how do we properly name them? To name a point, don't forget you have to write the word point. You can't just put a little dot, and you just choose. I want you to look at point C. I choose point C, okay? If I want you to look at that line, we name a line with 2 points. Always 2 points, only 2 points, and the order doesn't matter as long as you're 2 there. So if I want you to look at that line, I might name it AC with a line above it. You could do AB, you could do BC, you can flip-flop the letters, 2 letters, only 2 letters, always 2 letters. To name the plane, you have to write the word plane, and then you need exactly 3 letters. Only 3 letters, always 3 letters. 3 from your points, and 2 can be on the same line, but the third one cannot. Okay, you cannot name this ABC because that's all on one line. You have to use at least 1 point not on the same line. So I'm going to have to use this point D, and maybe I'll use A and B. The order of your letters doesn't matter, so I'm going to have a bad plane, okay? As long as you use 3 letters, and that D is not with the rest, so I can make that a bad, okay? Line segment. I want you to only look between B and C. I tell you B, C, and I put a line above it, no arrows on it. So it tells you to stop at B and stop at C. All right, for array, if I want to start at B and go towards A, okay, and only look there, I put my starting letter first, my second letter, and then I put the arrow over the second letter. It doesn't matter which direction in the picture the letter goes, but when I write it, I just put where I started and then my arrow over the letter I went through. Okay, in 1.2, okay, so 1.2, if you can remember back from there, you have pictures where you had a line segment and maybe you had part 1 over here, part 2 over here, and it equals the whole thing, okay? So that was our setup, part plus part equals whole. When we got to 1.3, we said be careful because we have a similar picture, but it tells us there's a midpoint or bisect right here in the middle. So we get one side and one side, or part 1 and part 2, right? So in this case, I'm going to be honest, I'd like to have it this way instead. We get part equals part. Okay, so that's just kind of a reminder between 1.2 and 1.3 that setup changes slightly. We also got 2 formulas in 1.3. The midpoint formula, right? This is a quick one that simplifies to XM and YM if you're just looking for the midpoint. If you're looking for a missing endpoint, remember we use the full equation. We plug in what we know. Just remember what gets plugged in is always from the ends, okay? We always grab these values from the ends. Don't grab the one from the middle for the top of this, okay? Just a quick reminder there. And then we get the middle ones when we get our answer, or we choose the middle ones to plug in for XM and YM. We also did distance formula. Just a reminder, you need to have both of these formulas memorized for the test. You do not get to use the formula sheet or this gold note sheet. It's not going to be written on the board, okay? In 1.4, we talked about a bunch of angle relationships, okay? If you have an angle and it's somehow there's another one, so there's part 1 over here, there's part 2 over here, they're not necessarily the same size, we do part plus part equals whole again, okay? And remember, that means we have to know the whole thing or have a expression for that whole thing, okay? If an angle is bisected, okay, so remember this is kind of like the segment bisected. Now when my angle's here, they tell us that this side is the same as this side, right? Then we have side equals side or part equals part. Okay? If you have two angles that together form a 90-degree angle, okay, but together they form 90, we know that part plus part equals 90, right? Or if two angles form a straight line, because that happens sometimes too, they're not the same, right? But part plus part equals 180 because of the straight angle or straight line. Flipping the page here, and at the top we did 1.5, more angle things, more setups, and like how we can set these up into math equations. Remember, a lot of vocab here. Complementary, we need to remember, not let me try. Complementary, that means 90. It comes first in the alphabet for C. Supplementary comes second in the alphabet for 180, okay? So if we talk about complementary, add them up to 90. If they say they're supplementary, add them up to 180. If I have two angles that are vertical, right, straight across from each other, we make angle 1 equal angle 2 because they are equal, okay? They're congruent. If two make a linear pair, that's a line, and together they make a pair, we can make them add up to 180. In 1.6, we talked about polygons and all the rules for polygons. Don't forget, you need to know all those names of each 3-sided, 4-sided, 5-sided, all those. So if you're not sure, go back and check your notes from 1.6. But the big thing is we want to know if a polygon is regular, all the sides are equal, so part equals part, or all the angles are equal, so part equals part. So both are true for a regular polygon, okay? And for 1.7, we had some formulas. Notice I didn't put the square one on here because you can use the rectangle one. It works the same. But these are the formulas. You need to have them memorized. You need to know how to use those, okay? And just a quick note, when we talk about 1.7, remember the rule of thumb. If units are given, put units on your answer. Okay, so I'm going to count that for a point. So if your unit's there, you get a point. If your unit's missing or your unit's wrong, you do not get your point, okay? So make sure you know your units and you put them on there. That's chapter 1. That's the big things you need to know. And so practice it on your review pack. Get ready for your chapter 1 test.